All right, so Puff's legal team wants less restricted access to the tapes that have the freak offs on them. It looks like the government doesn't necessarily want to give them that access. And we got some new insight on what actually is on these freak off tapes. And so we're going to talk about that in this video. And so I want to welcome you back if you've watched some of my videos before. If you don't know who I am, my name is Jamal Kersey. I am a criminal defense attorney. I've been practicing law for over 15 years. And on this channel, we're breaking down legal concepts so you are in the know. Now, listen, we're in January and the trial is not too far away. The trial's supposed to be in May. And, because Puff is in custody, I don't see the defense trying to push the trial date back. Puff is definitely wanting his day in court. He wants to get out of custody. Obviously, they put up so many efforts to try and get him out of custody. And since those weren't successful, then he's going to want to push this along as quickly as possible. Now, the difficult part with that is there is so much evidence. We had heard the government indicate that it had over 20 something terabytes of information, and that is just a massive amount of discovery. But, with Puff's resources, he's hired the best of the best when it comes to a legal team, and I'm sure they have multiple attorneys and paralegals going through that evidence, and that's going to make it a bit more practical to have their trial sooner rather than later. Whereas, somebody, if they had either a public defender or even, an attorney who might only have the one lawyer in the office or a couple lawyers in the office, they just wouldn't be able to get through that massive amount of discovery in this short amount of time. So maybe the defense team can pull it off, but they filed a motion with the court, or they filed a letter with the court to let the judge know that they wanted better access to these tapes, to the tapes, the recordings of these freak offs, right? So, the freak offs have been the central focal point of this case. And, when you just hear about it, your mind can go all kinds of crazy places in terms of what's going to actually be on these tapes. But it appears that, the government has indicated that these are going to be, the key pieces of evidence to ultimately convict Puff, right? And so it comes down to this, right? The defense is saying we need access to these tapes, to the digital recordings, right? Because what happened is the government has put what's called a protective order on their access, and so this is relatively common. If you have certain media that's sensitive, then there can be a protective order in place, meaning that some of the access is restricted. Oftentimes, it's going to be for the defense attorney and your client, for their eyes only, or anybody else that's on the defense's legal team, right? So you can't just disseminate the videos out to the public and all that stuff. That's what the protective order is. But in this case, the government has restricted to their access to where the defense team can only go and view these tapes probably at a government office under, government supervision. So, they probably have, federal agents watching over their backs as they're watching these videos, right? So they don't just have, the access to be able to download them and watch them in the comfort of their offices and the like. And so what the defense is saying is, hey, you are compromising our ability to defend our client, right? We need to be able to have access to these tapes, to have experts go through them. They want to be able to enhance the audio. They want to be able to enhance the video. They want to be able to look into the metadata. They want to be able to confirm, when these videos were actually recorded, and they have a right to do that, right? But without that access, without having the access to it and having to just watch these videos in the government offices, it makes it really difficult for them to defend their case. And so they're saying that that Puff's due process rights are being violated by this lack of access. And so the interesting thing is we finally got an insight as to the defense's take of these videos. And you'll remember I had said in a few videos ago, I was talking about how when you see these videos, there probably isn't going to be any sort of, on its face, you're not going to be able to say, okay, this person is forced, or this person didn't want to be there, or this person was so, drugged out of their mind that they didn't know what was going on, or they were excessively drunk. And the defense has come out and said, hey, listen, in this letter, there is no evidence of violence. There's no evidence of coercion. There's no evidence of threats. There's no evidence of manipulation. There's no evidence that anybody is, incapacitated by either drug use or overly drunk and not consciously aware of what they're doing. And so this comes down to, the defense being able to argue, and they said in their papers, there's certainly no evidence of sex trafficking. And so it sounds like, from what they're saying, it's just what they categorize as consensual sex between, grown adults who just happen to, pull out the camera and record, because these weren't videos that came from Puff. Apparently, these are videos that came from Cassie, right? And so that would let you know that these weren't, or at least the thought is, they weren't hidden recordings or recordings that that either she wouldn't have been aware of, right? And so it really becomes interesting now that we have a better insight. And of course, this is what the defense is saying, but it's not going to be obvious just from watching the videos that, she was forced to be there or she didn't want to be there. So it's really going to come down to her testimony to be able to say that, he was so controlling and he was so violent that's why, I did these things. I felt like if I didn't do these things, then, he would kick me out of the house, or he would ruin my career, or he would, assault me, or, he would have somebody else assault me, or whatever her position is going to be. But, when it comes to cross-examination, then, the defense attorneys are definitely going to have a lot to work with, because, when you watch that video, right, when the jury sees that and the defense plays it back and she is, performing oral sex on somebody, or she's being penetrated and appears to be enjoying whatever she's going through, the defense is going to be asking her, like, are you really sitting here and telling this jury that, you weren't into this? It looks like you are having a hell of a time here, right? And so that's going to be a very interesting cross-examination if and when we get to that place. But it'll be interesting to see how the government responds to the defense saying, hey, you are depriving Puff of his constitutional rights to have access to this evidence. They're saying he has a constitutional right, and it'll be interesting to see how the government responds, and also how they respond to, what the defense was able to sort of slide into that motion, because that wasn't really the issue of the motion, but they've managed to put it out there that, hey, these tapes are pretty, vanilla, right? In terms of whatever the government thought these tapes were going to show, it's just not there. And the reality is everything was consensual. Anybody who was participating in this absolutely wanted to be there. And so, they really don't have a case against Puff. So pretty strong language coming from the defense, and, we'll see how it ultimately plays out. Puff definitely could use a win here. It seems like every other day there's a new civil suit coming out with, just pretty bad allegations. It is not looking good for him in the court of public opinion. But again, none of that comes into play when it comes to this criminal case. The government has to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that he was engaged in sex trafficking, and that might not necessarily be as easy as they thought it would be. Well, if you got something out of this video, show me some love, hit the like button, make sure you subscribe to the channel, and turn on those notifications so you never miss a new video when it drops. As always, I want to thank you so much for watching, and until next time, peace.